Hi everyone, my name is Nikki and welcome to my channel. So in this video we will be doing my March bullet journal spread, and as you guys voted on the poll on my last video, we're going for a space theme. And I was really inspired by ideas of childhood and dreams of becoming an astronaut, that sort of thing, so I decided to accumulate all of these different ideas together and create this new and interesting spread. So throughout this bullet journal you'll see many planets, different star constellations, and little dreams of this child character throughout. It's quite an interesting new idea and I'm very excited to share it with you guys and bring it to you. So we will begin with my introduction to the month. Of course, don't forget that you guys can vote for next month's theme by voting in the poll in the top right hand corner of the screen by clicking or tapping on that little eye. So to introduce this theme, I decided to draw these planets in the form of balloons being held by this little cosmonaut. This was really enjoyable because I got to play around with all of these different designs of the planets, and I looked up different reference photos of all the planets in our solar system and tried to model them around the patterns and anything like that. But to be honest, it's a great opportunity to let your imagination run wild. For this spread, I'm sticking to a very monochromatic theme, and I'm using these Unipen fine liners in light grey, dark grey, and a little bit of black in the thicknesses of 0.5mm and 0.2mm. I'm able to use different dotting techniques and just basically play around with all the different textures and designs, thinking of the landscape and the terrain of each planet. For this spread, I'm sticking to a very minimalistic color palette, and I'm basically using monochrome tones, grays and blacks. I'm using a light grey, dark grey, and a little bit of black in my Unipen fine liners in the thickness of 0.2mm and 0.5mm. And even though the color palette is so limited, it works very well because it allows me to play with tone and shade. Personally, I like my drawings to be very detailed and I do not like them to look flat and 2D. I like to bring that 3D element. So I also use a little bit of my Tombow brush pen to add a little bit of that depth, extra color, and make the planets look a bit more spherical and round. You'll see in a second. To write March, I used my Unipen brush pen in black and just tried my best to do some nice calligraphy and hand lettering. I'm not the best, but I'm still practicing as often as I can to improve my technique. And for the little astronaut there, I mainly use these different grey tones to try and add that extra depth and the shadows on his little astronaut outfit. So then, of course, moving on, we'll be doing the next page, which is sort of like the month as a whole, where I can make plans and set goals. I always love to go into a month being able to have goals set and have something to work towards, so I'm not actually wandering aimlessly throughout that month, and I've got something that I can work on. It's very motivating for me, so I began by drawing out the calendar and then hand lettering March at the top of the page. For the calendar, I used my Java pen, non-smudge pen, and that was in 0.7mm. And then moving on, I'm also hand lettering the word goals at the bottom of the page, and I'm drawing 5 different bullet points just so I can have something to work towards and just write those points down. Now we'll be introducing the stars, so I'm just drawing some different star constellations all throughout the bullet journal, and I really like the idea of playing around with these different elements and having them fill space, but also really it kind of sets the scene as if you're looking at the different orbits of the planet and looking at everything from that analytical perspective. So on the next page, I wrote my plans and tasks. This is sort of like a brain dump page where I can write down anything that I'd like to work towards. For the next part, in the bottom corner of the plans and task page, I'm basically doing some planets in orbit. So I've got 3 rings, and the way I've designed it, I've got the first ring in the center. It has the smallest dashes and they're very close together, and then gradually the orbit gets bigger, the lines get bigger, and the spacing also gets bigger. Then I drew some little planets of different sizes and types around there with some moons just to add that extra decoration, and I'm using my Tombow brush pen in that grey just to fill in some stars and add some of that shading to the planets so the light's hitting them in one direction. I think it works very well to make it look a lot more 3D and just adds a little extra element that gives it that very special, more professional looking finished touch. The next page is my mood tracker, and I was inspired by something I saw on Pinterest where basically you have a different moon or a planet for every single day of the month, and then you have a little key at the bottom. So the idea is that for depending on how you're feeling, you've basically got to draw like the shadow on the moon, or you can leave it full. So I'm just working on drawing the key right now, and it gives me a little opportunity to be able to doodle and be that extra little bit more creative every day. It gives me something that I can use to take my mind off work and anything that's happening during during the day. So depending on how much of the moon is in the shade, the less it's in the shade, the more happy my day was. It's a very simplistic idea, but I think it's very fun to play around with also, and I really like the way that it turned out, and I can't wait to see what this page will look like at the end of the month. I'm aiming to keep it mostly just clear full moons, but you never know. And I basically use my Tombow brush pens for that in like this cool grey and a warm grey, and then I'm using my Unipen brush pen to do the black shaded side of the moon. To finish off the design of the page, I'm also just adding a little corner box around the key just to separate that from the rest of the moons. And then I labeled them for each of the emotions, and at the top of the page I hand lettered the word mood just to make sure that the page has a title in that standard calligraphy. Of course, I'm still practicing, but if you guys have any methods you'd like to share with me or any techniques, then I'd be glad to hear. The next page is my water tracker, and I've been keeping up with this for around 3 months now, since the beginning of the year actually. And basically it's where I track how much water I'm drinking every day, because I've been really bad at that, and it's my New Year's resolution to try and drink more water and keep on top of my health. So basically I have a grid with 1 line per every day of the month, and then I have a section for 8 glasses of water. Basically I used to have a grid and then I'd color in a box every time I had a drink, but this time I'm going through with the idea of drawing a little star for every drink that I have, just something a little bit more different. And I feel like this spread is really quite interactive, and it's actually making me want to draw more and spend more time actually incorporating my hobbies of art and doing these little things, and it really encourages me to take more time to myself after every day. So just to decorate that page, I decided to draw this image of a little spaceman holding this giant ice cream cone full of all these different ice creams, and then all the different scoops of ice cream I made to look like a different planet with all these different designs, different lines, craters and such. Of course, I was inspired by all the planets that I could find, and I think that it's absolutely amazing and turned out very well. It really allowed me to mess around with creativity and basically put all of these different ideas together. And I also just wanted to play around with the idea, seeing as I had half of quite a long page left, I wanted to add a more of a long drawing, if that makes sense. So to fill in blank spaces, I drew a couple stars and circles just around the place so it fills in that blank space, and another star constellation. And yeah, I added more shading with my Unipen fine liners and a little bit with my Tombow brush pens as well, just to add that 3D effect. And I started to work a lot more on the outfit of the astronaut to really add the extra shading and depth to make it stand out more on the page. Also, don't forget, as I mentioned briefly in the beginning of the video, that if you would like, you can vote for the theme of next month's bullet journal spread by tapping on the eye in the top corner of the video and voting on the poll. I'll review it at the end of the month and then choose which theme I will do for the following month, and it's all thanks to you guys because I love to hear your opinions and give back to you. Now we're moving on to some more necessary trackers. So the first one is my expenses page, and I've kept the design that I did last month because that worked very well for me and it's a lot easier to keep up with. So I've got these 3 different boxes, and at the top of the page I'm just lettering the word expenses, and then so the top box is basically where I track what I'm buying, what I'm purchasing, how much money I'm getting in, and it's a good way to be able to have that review of the month. And then I'll go into the bottom 2 boxes next, and then on the next page it's my YouTube tracker, which I'll go into soon. The bottom 2 boxes are plans and savings, so I can track how much money I'm saving each month, and plans, so for example what I need to buy, what I'm running low on, or if I've got any ideas, for example a video, which you'll see on this page. So I've basically got a space for video ideas. If I've got any inspiration I can note it down there. Then the what I'll need page, so for example I do a lot of DIYs, clothing customization, so if I need a new sweater or a new pair of jeans I can write that down on there. Or maybe I'm running low of a supply for my bullet journal or some thread, I can list down what I'll need to get and be able to plan my month ahead or all my future videos ahead. Then at the bottom I've got a growth tracker where I can write down how many subscribers and views I've got at the beginning and the end of the month. Then just fill in that blank space. I did a little orbit design at the bottom, just like on one of the first pages, all these different planets, moons, debris, and then I drew some star constellations in the background, sort of branching out on the 2 pages. And yeah, I think it looks so good, and being able to experiment with all these different tones, the different types of pens, I think that it managed to make everything look so interesting, especially with this very minimal color palette. my next two spreads are for schoolwork. So the one on the left hand side is for homework and the one on the right hand side is revision. So I went quite arty with this spread and I basically drew my standard table with what the homework is, the due date, and then a check mark for once it's done. But along that center line of the grid, I just decided to draw these planets. I modeled it around our own solar system. It's not too accurate, of course, but I just had the main idea and I was inspired by that. I just decided to create it in my own little way. And I really enjoyed experimenting with all the different sort of textures and designs of planets. I think that it was very fun. And of course, I hand lettered the word homework at the top of the page. For this, I wanted the spread to be mostly practical, so I have enough room to basically note down every single piece of homework. Usually, I can't write down absolutely everything, so I just prioritize all the main pieces. And then on the next page, I have my revision plan because we always have mock exams and tests coming up. So basically, it's a space where I can write down what I'm wanting to revise and have a check so I can make sure I've actually done that on time. So basically, I have a space where I can write down all of the upcoming tests and a thing that will be happening in the near future so I can plan ahead and have that written down all in the same spot and I don't get any nasty surprises. To fill in extra blank space, I decided to keep with the theme of the planets just to keep it quite cohesive and add a little bit more of that element. So I drew some crescents, one at the bottom of the page and one at the side, just so it looks like the surface of the moon, and I played around with drawing all these craters and working on the shading a lot. It's a little bit different, but I just wanted to have that element that sort of kept everything together, especially in a place where I need a lot of space and its main focus is the functionality. And now the moment everybody's probably been waiting for, the beginning of my day-by-day section. So this is a part where I start having like a daily diary entry, or basically where I can make plans and such. And for the beginning of this page, I always do a pretty little doodle on the left-hand side, then I have a calendar on the right. So for this one, I basically drew a child with a space helmet around his head, and then I have like these little rings full of different stars and planets. It looks quite dreamy and like he's just woken up from a dream and he's got all of these planets and thoughts of space. I really wanted to play around with the idea of having this like child full of dreams and ambitions, and this being sort of like his imagination into the world of space. I basically used dark grey to do the outlines, and then for the arms I used the lighter grey, and then just to add that shading I mainly worked with the lighter grey and built it up from there. I wanted it to still have that monochromatic colour scale, but I didn't want it to be too harsh, so when I ended up deciding to darken some areas, I used a very fine, I believe 0.03mm black pen, or a 0.02mm black pen from Unipin, just to add a little bit extra shading in certain areas. And then I also worked with my Tombow brush pen just to add that extra soft dark grey colour to it, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. For the calendar, it's basically a replica of what was at the very beginning of my bullet journal, so I just drew the 3 lines, have each day of the week listed out there, and then every single day. Of course, it's quite simple, and then using my Unipin brush pen, I wrote March at the top. Usually I'd also write day by day, but I forgot to this time. It doesn't really matter though, and to fill in that blank space, I also drew some more star constellations just to keep up with the theme, and then I added in some more on the left page around the boy just to keep it quite cohesive and to make sure that there wasn't too much of that blank space. It felt a bit too empty. For a little bit extra to the design, I used my Tombow brush pen just to color in some of the stars and dots to make it look a little bit less flat, and then I darkened the stars on the left hand side too. And then we'll be moving into the day by day diary section, and I finally changed up the theme because I've been going with the same one quite consistently for a while, and then I thought, you know, I always bullet point my lists, so why not make this more suitable for lists? And I'm basically using up the same amount of space, 1 week per page, but I feel like here I can be a lot more productive with how I plan things out, and I really like this idea. So basically I have a square for each day of the week. The weekend is sorted into one square, and then I have at the bottom a space for this week, tasks to do, things that I should note down, and then next week, so I can have an idea of what I need to bring into the next week, what I should be doing, and planning ahead basically. Then just fill in the extra blank space, I drew those stars as well. Basically I feel that the main idea with this spread is that I can now start to bullet point my lists and use some sort of bullet point system. And now it's time for the flip through. So we begin with the March cover page, and then the month as a whole, where I will list my goals, and I have a blank page for my plans and tasks. Then following that, we have my 2 main trackers, one for my mood with all of these different moons, and then the second one for my water intake. And then moving on to that, we have some very necessary trackers for me, which are the expenses tracker and the YouTube planning space as well, where I can track my growth, my savings, and everything that I'm planning for in the future. Then after that, we have my school double page spread, which is for homework and revision, so I can stay on top of all of my work and make sure I'm revising all of my new content that I'm learning. And then we have the beginning of the day by day section with my lovely space boy on the left and then my calendar on the right. Moving from that page, we then have my day by day section with this whole new layout and theme that I'm very excited to start using. Very simplistic, but it will sure work very well for me. So I'm going to show you what I've been using, and my bullet journal is a Lemon notebook. I also use Unipen fine liners a lot in black, dark grey and light grey. I also use a brush pen and 2 Tombow brush pens. Everything will be listed in the description down below. I use a 15cm ruler and a Java pen as well. So that's it for the video, and I really hope that you enjoyed. It's been so fun to make this, so I hope you guys have a lovely day. If you did like the video, you can press the thumbs up. You can also subscribe to see monthly bullet journals and other videos, and don't forget to press the bell to receive notifications to when I post a new video. So I will see you next Saturday. Bye!